Hi, this is Timothy Zahn, author of Thrawn, and you're listening to Star Wars Reactions. Good for you.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
In 1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Rebellion.
Rebellion is built on hope.
And redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 134th episode of the Star Wars Reactions. That's right, we're back, and we are going to have a fantastic episode today. Let's get the introductions out of the way. My name is Aaron Harris, and joining me is the Logray to my Teebo, the David Modders. What's up?
What's up? Well, hey, we're up, we're recording, and we're going to have a fun time with the episodes. So, yeah, I'm back.
Perfect. We are going to continue on our journey on a part of our vintage reaction series, continue the journey through the Ewoks series from the 80s, mid-80s. This particular episode is the 9th episode of the season, called Sunstar versus Shadowstone. This was released November 2nd of 1985, written by Paul Dini and directed by Raymond Jeffries. This episode begins... Well, hold on, let me get my storytime voice in place. Me. This story begins with Chief Chirpa telling the Wooklings, aka younglings, a great story about a young Ewok warrior who battled Morag so that she did not control the precious gem called the Sunstar Shadowstone. The young Ewok warrior used Morag's own magic to split the gem in half. Morag has one half, and the other half is safely stored away nearby, according to Chief Chirpa. The chief also reveals to Wicket and Teebo that the young Ewok warrior was none other than Logray. Wicket cannot believe it, but Teebo can and wants to learn magic from Logray. Teebo approaches Logray to be his apprentice. Logray, like many other great teachers, starts Teebo off with the simplest of tasks. In a very sorcerer's apprentice moment, like Mickey Mouse, Teebo learns that he could take a shortcut via a magic wand to clean Logray's hut. Wicket, Latera, and Kneesaa come to visit Teebo while he is cleaning the hut. After Wicket and Latera make fun of Teebo's quote-unquote magic skills of sweeping, he tells them to come to the forest so he can show them how good he is with magic. Unfortunately, Morag shows up in the form of a beautiful siren and captures our heroes. Morag proposes a trade, our heroes for the Sunstar. Logray must face Morag at Mount Thunderstone, and as the battle rages on, the Ewoks help Logray. Once Morag has both parts of the stone, she makes the volcano erupt inside her lair. Morag becomes a lava monster, only to be defeated by Logray's magic, in which he brings a spring of cold water to cover her and turn her into stone. The Ewoks believe they have lost to Logray, but he found the Sunstar Shadowstone in the middle of the rubble and appears in a beautiful tree. The essence of Morag turned into something beautiful. Well, let's go into our initial reactions, folks. I'm going to kick this off just because I feel like it. So
No, do it.
Let's do it. First off, let me just start off by saying, although I have made jokes about it in the past, I truly do love David's novel-length synopsises. Because whether you have seen the episode or you have no interest in watching it, you know exactly what's going on, and you aren't lost throughout our discussions, so it's perfect. So with that out of the way, thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Fabulous job. Now, let's talk about the episode. What a fantastic story of good versus evil, and what a great example of learning from your elders. I remember looking at my grandfather when I found out that at one point during his military career during World War II, he actually drove General Patton around. And I remember looking at him the same way Teebo looked at Logray in just pure awe and fascination. And then to see Teebo want to do whatever it took to become Logray's apprentice is just such a good example of hard work to get to where you want to be. I just loved seeing this. And honestly, I love seeing Morag return because we haven't seen her since what, episode 1?
Yeah. I like her as a character. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it was a long payoff for somebody that showed up in episode 1 to go away in episode 9. So, but it was worth it. Fabulous episode. David, what did you think?
Yeah, and I guess first off, one of the last vintage reactions and this vintage reactions, both these episodes, I don't know, like Aaron was just mentioning my novel length, and it's not a synopsis, it's a novel. But it's weird, as I've watched these last 2 episodes, I've really felt a pull to really describe the story out, because I think they're so good and they have so much to learn, so much for young people to learn, and whether you're middle-aged as well. There's really good morals. So anyways, to that end, I would say what struck me while watching this episode was how, I'm seeing this very differently than I would have if I watched these at a younger age, back in the mid 80s. But what I mean by that is, I appreciate how Paul Dini wrote Wicket and Teebo's conversation at the start of the episode. Wicket can't believe old Logray was once a great warrior, and Teebo does, and he believes it and wants to learn from Logray. And I would really love to see our culture, particularly young people, embrace Teebo's point of view here. Beyond this point, I just really enjoyed the battle between good and evil, like Aaron said. Love that within Star Wars, that when it's a clear-cut battle between good and evil. And so it was. I just, again, these last 2 episodes are 2 of my favorite ones, and just really impressed by what they did. Now, again, Paul Dini, if people don't remember, he was not only working here on Ewoks, but big part of Batman the Animated Series. So,
and I love me some Batman the Animated Series.
Exactly. Paul Dini's a legend, so I just sure I pointed that out. To see him come back as a writer here, he did the first episodes. I'd have to go back and look how many. Then he's been gone for a while, but he's back for this one, and so I just wanted our listeners to know that.
Very cool, because he did a fabulous job.
Yeah. With
this episode. And both of us alluded to it in our opening statement, so I want to kick off with this talking point. It very much, the biggest theme in this particular episode is seeing Teebo looking up to Logray in a way he never has before. He learned something about old man Logray, and now is longing to learn from him. Even starts calling him Master Logray throughout the episode. I wonder how Mace Windu feels about that. But anyway, he's a master. But but just seeing that happen in this episode was very refreshing, because that's really something that you don't get to see a lot in today's society. It's out with the old, in with the new. There's not a lot of time to learn with the old. Everybody thinks they know so much already. We don't need to learn from somebody else. And it definitely, if we would all just sit back and take a moment to appreciate the lessons learned by the older generation, it could definitely, change your life. It could make life easier, and it could keep you from repeating mistakes.
Yeah.
And it was really awesome to see Teebo do that. Wicket reacted just like everybody else would in today's society. Old man Logray, nah, whatever, and walked off. Teebo was the one that was thoroughly engaged, thoroughly believing, and then, of course, believed it to the extent that he wanted to become that.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's brilliant how Paul Dini wrote this. And again, it's so fun to have an exciting battle between good and evil, but you're also learning at the same time, right? And I hope back then in the 80s that kids really did pick up on that. Like, oh wow, just because this man or woman is older than me and they seem like they're ancient, it doesn't mean like that they weren't young once, and again, I saw a lot of clients today, and one of the things that I think about when I see them is I visualize them as a younger man or woman, in their 20s, 30s, if they're married, raising kids. If they don't have kids, fine. But I visualize them at that age. And, I do think, we talk about Western thought, Eastern thought. One thing that we do know this in our Western culture, that we value youth and we value money. In Eastern culture, right, buddy? There's been a stance of valuing older age. And elders. I years ago had clients from Japan, and I would speak to them quite a bit about this. They had mentioned, how unfortunately in some of the Eastern cultures and in Japan, there was a move bit away from honoring their elders and more of a focus on youth there as well, probably with the Western influence, into Japan and stuff like that. But, you really think about untapped resources. And I work in a retirement community here in Central Florida. And when I talk to my clients, they're just a bastion of incredible experiences and knowledge. And I just wish culturally we really dove into that and really talked to them about it. I get the privilege of doing that. I get to ask them all kinds of questions and learn from them. At the same time, I'm trying to help them with, whatever issues they want help with. But, I really would love to see our youth, and I put this in our talking points, and I just see the value in older persons in your community, but can you be open to learning from them? And my encouragement is to be open to learning from them.
Oh, absolutely. And you see this not only in this episode, but I think of some of these TV shows that I've watched recently with where we had a kid where you watch a kid. I wish I could remember what show it was, but there was a kid that needed to do some work, some community service hours, and the only thing left for them to do was go to a retirement home. And they were so upset they had to go to the retirement home and deal with all the old retirement people. But it ended up being the greatest thing in this kid's life, because they learned so much and they got so close with some of these folks, these elderly folks at this retirement center, just getting to know them and learning about them, learning what life was like in the past, learning the lessons that they went through, and hearing the stories they could tell, because they're, it's a bastion of wealth and knowledge. I mean, honestly, I would rather sit down. If I miss my grandfather. I wish he was still here. I would love to sit down with him for an hour and just pick his brain. 1 hour just to pick his brain. And I would rather do that than reading 12 history books, because I feel I would get more out of it.
I want to talk to him. When you mentioned he drove Patton around, I'm like, wait, what? I did not know that until you just mentioned it.
Well, here's what's funny. He never told us that. We did not find that out till after he passed away. So we never got to question it, ask him about it, because the only reason we found out about it is they were doing during the anniversary of World War II a couple years ago, they were doing the local newspaper, because they live literally in backwoods Alabama. I mean, you're 30 minutes from a gas station, an hour from a Walmart, and Pizza Hut doesn't even know where you are.
Right.
Backwoods Alabama. So, the little local paper for the little city that was nearby, where the only grocery store they had was a Piggly Wiggly. They were doing stories of all the local men from the area that fought during World War II, and they did a special every day of the year. And they did one on my grandfather, and when they pulled his record, it showed that there was about a month period when he was in Europe that he was assigned to driving Patton around.
Nice.
And we're like, oh my gosh. My grandmother didn't even know it. She's like, I was married to that man for over 60 years, and he never told me any of that. So it's quite a fascinating story, and I would love to get more. I would love to have picked his brain on that. But it's just something anything from that time period, though, he never talked about. It was just, a lot of the men from that time period, they won't talk about the war, just because of everything they went through and what they saw. And it was definitely a life-changing experience for these teens and 20 somethings, fighting in that world war. So, but yeah, I would have loved to have known that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, let's keep moving on here, because this was a fabulous story. And a big part of this story was, of course, not only what we already discussed, but also the battle of good versus evil, Logray versus Morag. And it's all about the balance of the stone of this particular two-sided stone, the Sunstar and the Shadowstone.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it hit you this way, David, but it definitely hit me like this. We're dealing with the stones, and we're dealing with the balance of good versus evil and everything. And I'm sitting there thinking, light versus dark, Jedi versus Sith. I mean, it's just kind of a mirror reflection there of good versus evil. And I thought that was well portrayed in this episode.
Oh yeah, I really liked it. I remember seeing, looking at all the episodes from season 1, and you see this name, Sunstar versus Shadowstone. You're like, sign me up. And it delivered. I thought it was really cool. And to see, Logray end up having the Sunstar part hidden in his hut. And then, of course, Morag has the Shadowstone. But to watch this battle play out was really cool. And initially, when Logray arrives at Mount Thunderstone, again, I know if people listen to our previous vintage reactions, I pointed out an homage to Return of the Jedi. When you see this tree open up and quickly eat a bug, it reminded me of, the ward outside of Jabba's palace. Well, here when Logray's entering Morag's lair, it had a total homage to Luke entering Jabba's palace. And basically, you know how Luke moves the two Gamorrean guards aside, you see Logray kind of say out a quick saying, and you see the two goons. I don't even know what they're called. They work for Morag, but they immediately, their eyes start to twirl and they're under a trance, and they're kind of floating up in the air. And I say two, but he ends up doing another two. So Logray ends up moving four of Morag's goons aside, and I thought that was a really neat little, what I thought was again another homage to Return of the Jedi. Again, these are 1985. Jedi comes out in 83, so pretty close proximity. But right after that, he does that. You see the battle ensue, and it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it definitely was quite cool to see the fight, and it was definitely intense. And you see Logray getting beat down.
Yes.
He is not doing well in this fight. To the point that he actually does lose the Sunstone to Morag, who then becomes, ultra lava monster queen, over lava monster power Morag. So, yeah, honestly, you know what I went to when I saw that scene?
What's that?
When she got the stone together and all of a sudden she emerges as this giant lava monster. Did you ever see the 80s movie Masters of the Universe?
Yes.
When Skeletor gets the Sword of Power and claims the power of Grayskull, and he goes from his dark robes to this metal-clad skeleton guy. He's not Skeletor anymore. He's a god. That's what I went to when I saw that. And what's funny is immediately after that, we see Logray plant his staff in the ground and start quoting something, and his eyes close. And I'm sitting there going, the way he slammed that staff in the ground, I see Gandalf going, "You shall not pass."
Exactly. You feel like all these shows pull from each other. And did Peter Jackson, remember that scene in this episode when he goes to start to make the Lord of the Rings? I mean, because, Peter Jackson's a massive Star Wars fan. And, the letters I was thinking about, and I did not see it coming in the battle that she turns into this lava monster. I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And then, I thought about what my son and all his buddies were saying all the time with video games. And of course, my friends and I never said this when we were playing video games, the original Atari 2600 and so forth. But they would always say, OP, that's OP, overpowering. And I thought, whoa, she just went OP, on Logray. And so I do love how it is kind of that simple way of defeating her, very similar to the Ewoks, defeating the Empire in Return of the Jedi, more of a, natural, fresh, good-mannered way. And he does help them. He helps win the day. But they thought he was gone, though, right, Logray?
Yeah, absolutely. They certainly did. And of course, out from the shadow of despair comes Logray. Chanting his spell as he emerges from the rubble. And of course, we find out that he keeps Teebo as his apprentice. And of course, Teebo is learning the magic and uses some of the magical stones that we see Logray using at the beginning that we see Chirpa using at the beginning to tell us to set off fireworks in the sky.
Yeah. That was cool. Yeah. What is Logray? Prism stones? Prism stones,
yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see that. And of course, we can't talk about this episode without mentioning Kneesaa with the most iconic line from the Star Wars saga. She utters the words that we have heard time and time again. in movies, in series, throughout the saga. And of course, that line is, I have a bad feeling about this.
And it was an appropriate time because they were heading towards that cave where, Morag is got magic going to look like a younger, attractive kind of siren type character.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It was perfect timing. But then again, anytime that line is used in Star Wars, it's perfect timing.
That's right.
Of course, I do enjoy the twist they put on that line in Solo when Han is sitting in the cockpit of the Falcon and he's like, I've got a good feeling about this. And he's just grinning ear to ear as he's flying the Falcon. That could have been any more perfect. So, all right. Well, anything else you want to touch on before we go into our final thoughts, buddy?
No, I feel good about what we've covered here.
Perfect. Well, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? Give us your final thoughts on the Sunstar versus the Shadowstone.
Yeah, well, and I did allude to this earlier, but just like the last Vintage Reactions episode that we recorded a little while back, where we covered the Land of the Guppins, I felt like this episode, had a number of good learning points, like that one did. Like here, I really liked him having to start with the menial jobs before getting to the big stuff, which is magic. I love the message of valuing the elderly and what they have to offer society. Kind of going back to starting off with the menial jobs, when I saw Logray say, now you can sweep the hut, the first thing I thought about, again, we talk about all these different influences. I thought about Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi, right? Teaching
wax on, wax off.
That's right, just menial stuff, right? And how it builds up to the bigger stuff. And I just think it's so classic, right? That's why I mentioned with any great teacher like Logray or Mr. Miyagi or even Ben and, Obi-Wan Kenobi and stuff. They really, and Yoda as well, getting Luke to work on, balancing rocks. And he's all, why are we doing this stuff? Well, it's to build up. You got to start somewhere and have a good base. So I really liked that start with Logray with Teebo. Of course, you and I talked extensively about valuing the elderly and what they have to offer society. Another great learning point. And just overall, between last episode and this, just excellent, and just really, really enjoyed this episode. How about you? What are your final reactions?
Yeah, again, this was just another awesome episode with good moral lessons and just a classic 80s story trope, which of course is the witch disguised as the friendly siren. And of course, like we discussed earlier, Logray trying to stop new lava monster god Morag with the "You shall not pass" Gandalf move. I was pretty cool. But and we discussed a lot about the elders, and which is huge in my book. But the other thing I loved, and you alluded to it in your final thoughts, was the humility of Teebo through this episode. He wants to be Logray's apprentice, and he was willing to lower himself into that servant's role by sweeping up the hut, cleaning the pots, getting the mushroom that Logray needs for his spell, and so on, knowing that in the end it will pay off as he learns from at the feet of his master. And that's something that today's society greatly misses. We're in a very immediate gratification, immediate satisfaction, immediate results society, and we don't do that. We don't take time to learn. We want immediate results. It's very prevalent in sports. When you're looking at sports teams, they'll pay through the nose to get these all-stars to hope for a winning season and a championship, instead of taking time to build up the youth that they're drafting to carry a team into the future and building on the blocks that they have to carry. There is no building. It is all immediate money, win, win, win. There's no training, there's no building, there's no learning, there's no such thing as a rebuilding year anymore. It's sad. But all of that to say, this is an episode, if you don't watch any others, this is an episode to watch, because there is something for everybody to learn in this episode.
Nice. Well said.
So, well, we want to hear from you and find out what you think of Sunstar versus Shadowstone. You can, of course, hit us up on any of our social media. We are on Facebook and Facebook and Twitter at SW Reactions, Instagram, Pinterest, and of course Tumblr, where you can find us at SW Reactions. You can email us swreactions@gmail.com as well. David, if somebody wants to talk Star Wars with you, how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely. It's two ways. First is Twitter, and the handle there is at David_Modders, Modders. And the other is at Instagram. Just look up my name, David Modders, and you'll see my posts, which are primarily, Star Wars related pictures.
Absolutely. And of course, if you want to talk Star Wars with yours truly, the best place to do that is Twitter at TA Harris 121079. So make sure you hit us up there, and we can talk about Star Wars anytime you like. So let us know. Also, keep in mind too, we have our listener reactions episode coming up, and all about Ahsoka and what you hope to see or what you want to see in the upcoming Ahsoka series. So make sure you get your voicemails in. You can do that at speakpipe.com/Star Wars Reactions. The link is, of course, in our show notes, and you can find posts on our social media about it. So we want to hear from you. And we're planning on having an episode coming up there at the end of this month, the end of July, to discuss it. That's actually next week. As the time this episode releases, that will be our next episode. So you want to get it to us by the 25th, which of course is the 25th is, the 26th is when we want it. Or the 26th, which is Wednesday. You want to get it to us by Wednesday, the 26th, so we can have that for our show. Just tell us what you think in 90 seconds, and we'd love to hear from you. Well, David?
Sir.
It's that time of night again.
All right. I think I'm ready. I'm trying to get ready. I got to build up to this.
Yeah, well, you better be ready, because it is time for this week's Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week.
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Envelope, please. Here we go. What do you call an Ewok with no parents?
My goodness. I've been trying to, again, I've been making an effort to try to figure this out. I don't know. So, what do you call an Ewok with no parents?
It's an endorphin.
Oh, that is so, not an orphan, an endorphin.
An endorphin. Because they're from Endor. I kill me sometimes.
That is so not right.
It's an endorphin. Well, David, my friend, it has been fun as always, brother.
Well done, my friend. You really find the right ones for each of these episodes, man. So yes, It's been fun. I know you try. You definitely do it. I love to react with you. Love talking Star Wars with you, and it's just good to get a vintage reactions out there for people.
Absolutely. It has been great. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Y'all are the best. We love y'all. We're praying for you. Y'all are the best in the world. We appreciate y'all so much. Do something kind for somebody this week. Do something nice. You never know how that will change somebody's life. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@starwarsreactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.starwarsreactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.